So recently, there was an amazing moment of clarity on MSNBC of all news channels. A moment of truth, of reality that was slapped upside the heads of MSNBC anchors, and they couldn't even see the bigger perspective that, of course, we're going to be talking about in this video, as well as playing that very specific clip. And this clip is from a specific segment where MSNBC went onto the streets of swing states and talked to voters about issues. And to me, this video also highlights the kind of slowly backstepping, the slimy steps back, trying to rewind all the damage that MSNBC has been doing to the American populace for the last 3 years. But let's just get into the clip, because what I think this voter, specifically from Florida, had to say is very, very important.
And before we launch it, I want to remind people, we did a story pushed by the mainstream media within the last month or so where they were complaining that elderly people in this demographic we're about to see were actually upset that they were going to die before seeing the Mueller report. They were so worried about the Mueller report. And now you hear from an average guy, and it doesn't seem to be that way.
I'm more likely to support Trump today than I was at the original election.
That's interesting.
With Hillary, because you know, he's not a perfect guy. I think he's a despicable human being, but he's done a lot of good things for the country.
Hold it there. As soon as he says, I'm going to support Trump more because of this MSNBC, interesting. Again, goes on to talk about how despicable he is, how much he does not like Donald Trump, but he's still going to support them. What does that say? What does that say about the opposite side, that this man, this average voter, this regular person that they stopped into the streets, would rather support someone he views as despicable as the other side? What is the other side? This is what MSNBC is totally missing here, Jason.
Yeah, and you know, that's a great point, because when you look at this, it's not about right or left of this guy, and it's not about a perfect human being sitting there. Often when I'm talking to people, and I'm about to defend one of Trump's policies, for instance, him getting us out of the TPP, one of the few things he's done well, I'll say, listen, let's preface this. I don't think Trump's a great guy. I'll agree that, you know, there's a lot of evidence out there. Obviously, he was a womanizer. We all knew it. You know, oh, look, he throws his things out. I'm just saying you can relate to people on either side of the aisle by telling the truth. You know, that he's not a perfect guy. He's not the greatest guy.
Totally disagree with you. TPP was already done in the water. It was already finished. It wasn't going to be passed. Trump really didn't have to do anything on that part. As far as the other comments, whatever, let's just keep playing the rest of the clip.
How do you think the Democrats have handled this whole process?
Nothing's getting done in Washington. They should go about their business and get legislation passed.
Yeah, nothing's getting done. Obviously, even Donald Trump said it himself. This is the quote that people are highlighting here. I'm effed. This is the end of my presidency. People are saying he's guilty. Look. No. You look at that full comment, as we just talked about in the previous video. He specifically is talking about, I won't be able to get anything done because people are going to be obsessing about Russia. And that's exactly what we saw. There's another takeaway from the anchor here. She says something else that I also want to highlight here, but he brings up an important point. We've been distracted against real issues that affect this country that Donald Trump did campaign on, and he, on part of himself and also part of this, has failed to deliver on. Failed his non-interventionist policies, short economically domestic policy. He's done some interesting things different than were done before, but globally, internationally, foreign policy-wise, he has done far more worse things than even his predecessor, in my opinion, for my assessments. Let's play the rest of that clip from MSNBC, because when it comes back to that anchor, it kind of gives the kind of delusion here more context.
Stephanie, the most important soundbite of all that there to me was the guy who told me he thought the president was a despicable human being, but that he had done a lot of good for the country. What that tells me about how the 2020 Democrats should handle this, every minute they're talking about Robert Mueller is not a minute that they're talking about health care, education, immigration, the issues that these folks here in Florida told me they want to hear their candidates talking about.
Really? It makes me want to ask Republicans.
Wait,
keep playing. Someone who isn't a despicable human being, but who can do a lot of good things. I mean, call me simple. Alex.
Well, let me say
you're not
this.
simple there, ma'am. You're not simple. You're dumb because you've been pushing a gang that people are so sick of. You've been pushing the Hillary Clinton propaganda Kool-Aid juice on the American public so disgustingly that they would rather have something putrid, something that they don't like, than your gang that you're associated with. Obviously, Hillary Clinton, MSNBC was the major cheerleader, the major kind of player that was subverting anyone going against her, including Bernie Sanders on MSNBC time and time again. And people saw through that, and people are so sick of that other side, the corrupted Hillary Clinton side, that they rather have Donald Trump. And there is an important aspect to bring up here, because there's been a lot of people who didn't like Donald Trump, who weren't Republican, but voted for him, especially during the last election, because of this chaos vote, because of saying, you know what, I'm sick of the status quo. I'm sick of the establishment, which MSNBC has been bootlicking, which they're failing to even comprehend here, which this viewer brought up perfectly, that they highlighted on their show, which I think is the main aspect here. And this is why even MSNBC right now, they're walking back the whole Russian collusion story, saying, okay, guys, let's totally forget this history when we were wrong. Let's talk about the actual issues. And then finally, and then why should we trust you when you disgraced this country for 3 years and made that not a central talking point, except this delusion, conspiracy theory that was brought up by the intelligence agencies that you guys just ate up and regurgitated back to the American public without even questioning a damn instant of it. Sorry, Jason, I went on a little tangent there, but I bet you probably have a lot to say too.
Well, I'd just like to say this. Trump is responding now now that we've had a little more than 24 hours to go over what's in the report, and saying, hey, he talks about the notes. For instance, when we talk about that effed up comment, even in context, that's a note. We don't know that they actually took place. That's from Agent Hunt of the FBI. He talks about how the whole entire thing was an illegally started hoax. He said it's the most embarrassing thing to happen to the White House in its history. He calls out Brennan and Clapper specifically for lying. Remember, they're part of that intelligence community that was sure that Russia had interfered in our elections. And now, when you read more of their nonsense, they're sure of a lot more, aren't they, Luke?
He even put up a clip with Big Nadler versus Small Nadler. Retweeted Dan Scavino with that specific clip that we played on the last video. But he's not holding back. And when you look at the people who are really held responsible here, it is people like Clapper. It is people from the intelligence community that the mainstream media just were totally buying hook, line, and sinker without questioning. But this is definitely a defiant president, and this is something that, of course, let's be honest here, I believe in the long term will help him in the 2020 presidential elections. That's my kind of analysis. Do you think overall this is a kind of step forward, the hurdle that's going to launch him to the next presidential election, Jason?
Listen, I think the majority of actual thinking Americans did not get caught up in the hype of the Mueller investigation in the first place. It was those that were so upset that they're playing team baseball for Team Clinton and Team Democrat and Team Liberal when it went down that they obsessed over it. The majority of Americans, just like we've discussed before, if you go throughout America, it's a pretty nice place. People get along, but you would think there's a culture war going on every single street. No, most people, just like the gentleman that was interviewed there, have the discernment to realize, hey, this guy is not the best guy. But then again, most of these politicians that rise to the top are not the best guys. In my opinion, not my opinion, but his opinion, he thinks he's done some good things for the country. He doesn't see a candidate on the other side who he thinks will do as well. I think he was well stated, and I think there are a lot more people out there that think that way, Luke. But when even the alternative media is trying to pit the conservatives against the libtards, all you're going to have is conflict, and conflict promoted. So I really do hope that we can get beyond the Mueller report, the obstruction of justice, and start moving towards actual policies that help everybody and candidates that bring real issues to the forefront, like anti-war issues. Hopefully Tulsi will be able to do that this year. It's a real struggle because you know what? You want to see her on the debates, and hell, from what I've seen, I want to see her as the candidate to challenge Trump, and then we can get some real talks going. Then maybe we can actually start bringing down this deep state that Trump talked about for years before hiring them into his administration.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much Donald Trump said he was going to do something during his presidential campaigns, especially with foreign policy, and he's really hasn't delivered. The swamp that he was talking about draining really hasn't been swamped at all, and we really haven't gotten to the true issues that he really ran on. Domestically, there could be an argument made to counter that on some levels, and I totally understand that and give up on that aspect, but by and large, no. But now, because of these false attacks against him, I believe he's emboldened because the majority of the people running on the Democratic side have ultimately discredited themselves. The majority of presidential candidates on the Democratic ticket have been running with this Russian collusion story, and all of them, some of them are still running with it, and they have eggs on their face. And really, just looking at it, if you look at the kind of what's the kind of analogy? I hate the two-party analogy of the worst of two evils or the better
the lesser
of two
evils. The lesser of two evils.
The lesser of two evils. Yeah, Jason. If you look at the lesser of two evils, if you have to entertain that idea, it's hard to find anyone to vote for in the next presidential election, other than, as you brought up, kind of Tulsi Gabbard. Is there anyone else you see in this Democratic Party, Jason, that is the lesser of kind of two evils here? Because when you look at the major ones, especially the front runners, I don't see anyone.
Well, Mike Gravel may run. And we know that Mike Gravel ran way back in the day. In 2008, he was a 9/11 truth candidate. He was actually one of the people to bring the Pentagon Papers forward. I don't agree with everything that Gravel has to say. It's funny that you mentioned that because Dershowitz actually helped Gravel get those papers, the Pentagon Papers. The gray area in geopolitics is crazy. But if a Gravel doesn't run, no, I only see Gabbard right now as anybody that'll bring up real issues. So it is a conundrum.
Yeah, and I disagree with Gabbard on so many other issues as well, but lesser of two evils, I guess that would be the argument here to even make. But regardless of that, what do you guys make of the larger assessment? Because to me, MSNBC, that guy brought up the reality, and sadly, they couldn't even understand it. The establishment swamp versus the establishment swamp is not really a choice and a decision that's going to benefit the American people. And sadly, the people who destroyed the discourse, destroyed the actual issues from being dealt with, I do believe need to be held responsible and held their feet to the fire and never believed ever again. And if we lived in a just world, a lot of these people, the big social tech giants, monopolies, would of course downrank them, have big words around them, make sure that no one takes them seriously, because again, they've been proven just liars time and time and time again. Meanwhile, we get punished. And that's why we need you guys more than ever to not only share this video, but vote with your dollars, vote with your support. We have a t-shirt store. All the purchases from that t-shirt store go to supporting independent media. The link is in the description below. We thank all of you for participating in independent media. We love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.